It was a bright day in December 2017 when a Royal Caribbean cruise left the Port Everglades in Florida. There were more than 5,000 guests on board besides the staff. Everything appeared to be in order, and the ship was speeding towards its destination. All of the passengers were enjoying their voyage when an unexpected tragedy occurred on board the cruise. What actually happened on the ship was that hundreds of passengers became strangely ill, and no one knew what was going on. The doctors on the ship did their best to treat the passengers, but as time passed, more and more became ill. Soon, the number of sick passengers surpassed 500, and it was just increasing day by day. The doctors on the ship were so overwhelmed with patients that all they could do was stare at each other, unsure of what to do to cure the illness. The only medicines that could be found on the ship were basic first aid kits that could only treat minor injuries or illness. So when the situation got out of control, the ship captain got worried and took the decision to dock the ship at the nearest port. The captain was concerned that if they continued on their journey, the ship would become a ghost ship because everyone on board would eventually die of sickness, and the ship would end up floating in the sea like a cursed ship in the middle of the ocean with no one alive on board. After considering the option of docking the ship, the crew thought that the best possible option for them is to turn towards Sydney. So the captain and his crew decided to turn around. The cruise arrived in Sydney on a cold winter night on December 7th. Before moving forward to the next section of the story, what happened at the Sydney Harbor, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any future great stories we upload on our channel. Returning to the story, after the ship was docked at the Sydney Harbor, no one was courageous enough to board the ship or come near it. Everyone was terrified that getting too close would instantly kill them, or that a horde of zombies would wait for them inside and start running towards them if they got too close. So at this moment, no one could enter nor leave the ship. All of the passengers were desperate to get off, but the Sydney Harbor crew was unwilling to give them a green light. They wanted them to return to their original location, so they had a little disagreement on what to do. It was not possible to let the ship turn back to where they came from, because the trip back would spread the illness even further on board. The next morning, the Sydney government took the matter into their hands and decided to end the nightmare of all passengers and gave them the green light to leave the cruise ship. However, before anyone could come off, the quarantine team were airlifted onto the ship to carry out extra hygienic operational processes. At that point, they had to figure out what happened because no one knew why the passengers got sick in such large numbers. That's why they chose to use these hygienic treatments to augment standard cleaning processes and reduce the likelihood of a further outbreak. Passengers were evacuated one by one, and medical testing facilities were set up near the ship to separate the sick from the healthy. By separating them, the specialists could figure out everyone's symptoms to compare. The doctor stated that they have observed symptoms of a type of gastrointestinal ailment, but they are unable to identify the disease properly. The most serious patients were immediately transferred to the Royal Hobart Hospital for treatment. The tragedy was one of a unique kind. In fact, outbreaks of this nature are not unusual on large ships, but this particular infection was unusual in the sense that it spread in such a large number of people at once. Also, it wasn't clear if any of the people on the ship were sick with a dangerous illness before they got on. Later on, what actually happened on the cruise was that there was indeed a norovirus on board, which spreads very easily and quickly in different ways. Maybe there was a passenger infected with it, and he didn't know that because when you are infected with a norovirus, you won't realize it, nor have any symptoms for more than 2 weeks. As a result, the infected person may have boarded the ship during his initial stage of infection. However, it doesn't matter if you are at the initial stage of infection or not, you can shed billions of norovirus particles that you can't see without a microscope. And unfortunately, most of these norovirus particles can find their way to infect other people. Because you only need a very small quantity of virus particles to become ill, it is quite simple for the virus to contaminate food and drink. So the infected person on board the ship has somehow touched food with his bare hands that had particles of feces or vomit on them. Or he has touched the counter or surface on which food was put, which has bits of excrement or vomit on it. Other people on the ship then ate the food, spreading the virus to them. And when many people were infected, a chain reaction started, and the virus started to spread in a number of ways, like with the minute amounts of vomit that are spread through the air by the affected individual. Further, the food was either cultivated in polluted water or taken from water that was contaminated, such as oysters picked from water that was infected, or fruits and vegetables that were washed in water that was contaminated. Typically, symptoms such as vomiting, stomach discomfort, and diarrhea start between 12 and 48 hours after exposure. The symptoms of norovirus infection often continue for 1 to 3 days. For certain people, particularly younger children, persons over the age of 65, and those who have other medical concerns, diarrhea and vomiting can be extremely dehydrating and require the assistance of a medical professional. So, in this way, a chain reaction of infection started on the cruise, and then one after another the passengers became ill. It can even be passed from person to person by close contact with an infected individual who has the virus. Infections caused by norovirus are more common in confined spaces with a high population density, and the ship was an ideal place for it to be crowded with more than 5,000 passengers. So if the ship had been on its journey for a long time, it would have been a total disaster, putting all 5,000 passengers in grave danger. However, thanks to the ship captain's quick decision, the ship was able to turn around and arrive in Sydney on time. After that, the ship was cleaned and sanitized and was ready to continue its journey, which it completed without any tragedy. That was all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video story. If you did so, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing updates. Moreover, have you heard about norovirus before? Tell us your views in the comment sections below. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. See you in the next video. Until then.